calling Judaism 101, meaning brief notes on Jewish ideas, practices, thoughts, belief, etc. And because I want to talk about a secular version of salvation today, I wanted to just teach a little bit about the Jewish idea of salvation. And I'm referring to the daily prayer book, the weekday prayer book, where 3 times a day in the traditional prayer book, there's a prayer called Refuah, which means healing. So I'll read it and translate it for you. This is by the way, the 8th prayer, of the middle 13 prayers of the Amidah. It says, Rifa'enu Adonai v'nei rafeh. Heal us, O God, and we shall be healed. Hoshienu v'nivashea. Bring salvation to us, and we shall have salvation. Ki tehilatenu ata. Because you are our tehillah, something like that which we praise. V'ha'aleh rufuah shlema l'chol makotenu. And rise up complete healing for all of our illnesses, for all that plagues us. Ki el melech rofeh ne'eman v'rachman ata. Because you are a reliable, a faithful, and compassionate healer. Baruch ata Adonai, you are the source of blessing, Adonai. Rofeh chole amo Yisrael, the one who brings healing to the people of Israel. Now you notice here that when it says Rifa'enu Adonai v'nei rafeh, v'hoshienu v'nivashea, that refuah, healing, and Yeshua, salvation, are actually synonyms. So now let's look at the actual word salvation, and you can see it's from the word salve. Now a salve is something that you apply to a wound for some kind of relief or healing. So the original etymological meaning of salvation is that which brings healing. Now, refuah we typically think of as physical healing, although it doesn't have to be. Refuah can also mean mental, spiritual, emotional healing. Salvation, which probably was a synonym for physical healing, came only to be applied to an inner sense of healing. And the question is, what does salvation mean in the Jewish tradition? Of course, in Christianity, it has a very, very specific meaning, but salvation, when you look in context in the Jewish tradition, is a seeking to overcome a human being's alienation from the divine, a human being's sense that one has been abandoned by the divine, and wants to bring the divine back into one's life as a source of inner and spiritual healing. So salvation in Christianity, as you know, is a sense that we are at odds with the divine. We are all suffer the consequences of original sin. Therefore, we are cut off by the divine. And if you read especially the letters of Paul and the work of Martin Luther, you'll see there's a sense of we are abjectly, in an abject way, cut off from the divine. And salvation is a sense of being restored to communication with the divine and also enjoying life in the hereafter. They're radically different notions of salvation. So we don't believe in that. In Judaism, we don't believe in that salvation because we don't believe that we're cut off from the divine. So we're not looking for, as we have in Christianity, the vicarious act of atonement through the death and rebirth of Jesus Christ to provide us for salvation. So we don't have that sense of an intercessory. I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying we don't believe it, but rather a sense that every single human being possibly goes through senses of alienation from the divine, and we're looking for a salve on that spiritual wound. Now, what does that mean for each one of us? I personally believe that there is something called a spiritual personality. People have different kinds of ways they connect with the inner life, with spirituality and God. And for some people, salvation is just not a word that's important to them. So when a person says one can find salvation through some belief or another, once we go into the modern world where people are not automatically part of the church, people say, this doesn't speak to me. So one thing that you'll see in the history of modern Christian theology is a movement away from literal salvation into many kinds of metaphoric ideas of salvation. I think showing that in the development of modern Christianity, there are those for whom the idea of salvation taught in Paul and in Luther worked perfectly for them. It described their experience as human beings. What I'll call the traditional view of salvation articulated in Paul and in Luther fit them precisely, and that's what they believed. and they believe that their beliefs provide them salvation. We discover in the modern period there are many different kinds of personalities for whom that idea does not work. Now, what some have done is they've left the church. Others have joined churches that have what you might call a more spiritual as opposed to a literal take on salvation. In the Jewish tradition, it just doesn't operate in an important way. If I were to teach a class on Introduction to Judaism, I probably would never include teaching on salvation. It's just not an important idea for us. I would talk about spiritual healing, but not salvation as a core part of the Jewish faith.